Hello, everyone. Welcome to the VCC session on personal branding. My name is Tandeka Numbete, and I am the External Engagement Director with the Spencer Educational Foundation. So today we are going to talk about personal branding, and we're going to uncover what it is and why it is important. And I'll be providing you with some practical tools to start building your brand today. So just wanted to take a moment to give a huge thank you to the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance for creating this incredible platform to support the future leaders of our industry. So let's jump into it. Now, let's talk a little bit about brands in general. So typically when we think about brands, we think about company brands. So let's engage in a little exercise. I want you all to think about a few company brands and just see what naturally comes to your mind. Now, what's interesting is that most of us are very likely all thinking about the same brands. So the ones that immediately come to my mind are Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Adidas, Nike, Apple, Google, Amazon, Disney, Netflix, McDonald's, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, etc. And I bet that you were all thinking of at least one of those brands as well. So I am here to tell you that this is not a coincidence, that the brands that all came to our minds were not by accident, that these companies are very, very intentional about what they're doing. They're intentional about working hard for the brand that they've built, to advertise it, and to be in a position where they now take up space in our minds. And not just that, to also be the first brands that all of us thought about. So when we think about these very successful brands, I want you to think about what they all have in common. So what comes to my mind are a few key elements. So first is appearance. All of these brands have very distinct logos. They all have certain colors and patterns that are associated with them. They use the same type of fonts consistently. And so they've created something that we can visually see and have also come to expect. Next thing that comes to my mind is superior quality. So somehow these companies have convinced us that they put more care and attention into their work or into their product. So it may even take longer to produce, but when you receive it, my goodness, you're receiving a superior product. The next thing that comes to my mind is consistency. So for example, when I think about McDonald's, I might not be getting the best burger in the world. I might not be getting the most superior burger, but I am getting the most cost-effective burger, and I'm getting the same burger over and over again, no matter where I go across the country. And the last thing that comes to my mind is purpose and drive. So a lot of these companies have some type of mission or vision that they're working towards, and something that they're passionate about that may or may not even have anything to do with the product itself. So thank you for indulging me in this exercise as we have this conversation about branding. And I want you to keep these 4 elements in mind as we have this conversation, because I believe that what makes a brand the most successful is when you're able to combine all of these elements together. All right, so we've talked about branding in general. We've talked about some company brands that we're familiar with, and now we're going to pivot over to personal branding. So the reality is that we're living in a brand-centric world, and not only do businesses have brands, but we as people have brands as well. So essentially what happens is when you're visualizing someone in your mind based on your experiences with the person, or based on what you've heard about the person, based on the information that has been presented to you about this person, you, whether you realize it or not, are formulating a narrative or a brand about this person. Especially if your interactions with this person have been consistent, then what that does is it reinforces the brand or the image of this person that you have in your mind. So what's very, very important for everyone to understand about personal branding I think it's the most important thing to understand, is that perception is everything. So I want you to think about this for a moment. You've created this narrative or this brand about a person based on information that is around you. However, your perception of this person may or may not be based on reality. So, what ends up happening is that your perception of this person ends up being more important and more relevant than reality itself, which is a little bit crazy to think about, but it's absolutely true. So essentially, I'm saying all of this because I want to emphasize how important personal branding is. And now, if you're sitting in the audience and you're thinking, personal brand, I don't have a personal brand. I am here to let you know that you do. You already have a brand that is out there, that is in the minds of people. And this brand of yours is consistently being reinforced by the information that people have around them. And that's why this conversation today is so important. This is your opportunity to realize that A, you already have a personal brand, and B, this is your moment to take control of it. Because if you do not take control of your personal brand, if you leave it up to other people, believe me, they will fill in the blanks. They will come to a conclusion about you that you may not even like, and that may not even be based on reality. So, again, when you think about personal branding, I want you to keep in mind that perception is most important. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about where to start. And I think we should begin with the end goal. So ask yourself, what do you hope to achieve with your brand? So, for example, perhaps you want to use personal branding as a tool to help you land an internship, or your goal is to become class president, or let's say you're already in a working environment, so your goal is to stand out and to get a promotion. So once you have your goal in mind, next, I want you to think about your target audience. So for example, your audience could be your teachers at school. It could be your classmates. It could be your coworkers, your boss, or perhaps even other working professionals, or maybe even our wonderful friends at the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance. The next thing I want you guys to think about is what you want your brand to be. So when people think about you, what is it that you want them to be thinking about? So a few examples are, when people think about you, you want them to think that you're an excellent student, or that you are the perfect candidate for an internship at their company, or that you are a fantastic leader, that you'd be excellent as class president, or that you're a hard worker and that you're ready for a promotion. So next thing I want you all to think about is your elevator pitch. Now, if you've never heard of an elevator pitch before, the concept is, let's say you walk into an elevator at work, and then the CEO walks into the elevator right after you. So now you have this 10 to 20 second window where the elevator is going up. How do you introduce yourself to the CEO? Like, what do you say? So that essentially is what an elevator pitch is. It's that 10 to 20 second business professional introduction of yourself to senior leadership. So if you don't yet have an elevator pitch, that's definitely something that you should start working on today. And it could sound something like, "Hi, my name is Thandeka. I am a senior at Umtata High School. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm involved in several class projects. I represented my school at the Spencer Risk Management Challenge. I'm the class president, and I'm set to graduate in May 2026. Oh, and by the way, I'm currently looking for summer internship opportunities for 2026. So if you happen to know of any openings, please let me know." Boom! So in the space of just a few seconds, I have communicated several key points about myself, and I even threw in there what it is I'm seeking. Now, to add some flavor and spice, I want you to take some time to think about what makes you unique, what makes you stand out, what makes you special. I don't want you guys to think about things along the lines of what your favorite color is or whether or not you have a pet. It's not those types of things. I want you to think about something about yourself that will help someone else remember you in a business professional setting. So, for example, I'm originally from South Africa. I was born and raised there. So, for me, for part of what makes me unique, it's the fact that I'm from South Africa. So, that is something that I know will help someone else remember me. Something else that's unique about me, or a fun fact, if you will, is that I'm a scuba diver. So, I enjoy traveling. I enjoy going out into the ocean and scuba diving. So, in my conversations with people, I always find ways to introduce these unique characteristics about myself into the conversation to help the other person remember me. So, to go back to the elevator pitch, perhaps now it could sound something like, "Hi, my name is Thandeka Nombete. I'm a senior at Umtata High School. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I was born and raised in South Africa. I'm involved in several class projects. I represented my school in the Spencer Risk Management Challenge. I'm the class president, and I'm set to graduate in May 2026. Although my schedule is demanding and I have all these extramural activities, I still find time to travel and scuba dive where possible because I very much enjoy scuba diving. I'm currently looking for an internship for 2026. So if you happen to know of any openings, please let me know." Boom. So because I added those few key pieces of information about myself and what makes me unique, that elevator pitch is now sounding something that's more likely to stick in someone's mind. All right. So let's bring it all together. So now you have your goal, you have your target audience, you know what you want your brand to be, you have created your elevator pitch, and you've also thought about some things that make you unique and make you stand out from the crowd. So essentially, you have created your personal brand. Congratulations. So now I want us to take it a step further because I not only want you to have a personal brand and to take control of the narrative and take control of your image, which is very important, but I also want you to have a successful brand like Coca-Cola or BMW. So let's find ways to tie your brand into these 4 key elements that we talked about earlier. And we'll go through them one by one. So for the purposes of this exercise, let's pretend that you're currently in your senior year at high school and you want to obtain an internship for next year, for the summer of 2026. So first up is appearance. So since you're looking for internships, I'm assuming that you are putting yourself out there, that you're putting yourself in spaces where internship opportunities will appear. So you're attending industry events, whether they are in person or virtual. So think about how you are showing up in these spaces. So if your goal is to land an internship, dress professionally for these events. Yes, even if it is a virtual event. And of course, with virtual, it's a little bit easier because you only have to dress up from the top up, but just make sure that you're not like walking around or anything like that. So people will see your pajama pants at the bottom. But yes, even if it's a virtual event, take that extra 30 seconds to just dress up for the conversation. Show up in your work clothes because this will communicate that you are ready for work and that you are professional. So next up is purpose and drive. It is your responsibility to ensure that people know your purpose. They cannot read your mind. We do not know what you're thinking. So in this example, your purpose or your drive is to obtain an internship. So in all of your interactions with the working professionals, be sure to let them know at some point in the conversation that you're looking for work. If you wanted to take it a step further, you could even explain to them that you eventually want a successful career, hopefully within the risk management and insurance industry. And that all starts with obtaining your very first internship and adding that to your resume. So next up is quality. So ask yourself, what steps can you take to ensure that your brand is associated with quality? So it could be things like when you show up at the networking event, you're engaging in conversation, and that you're not just sitting there in the virtual room with the camera off and the mic turned off. Instead, you've got your camera on, you're already dressed professionally, you're participating in active listening, and you're looking for spaces where you can jump in to ask questions or to engage with the guest speakers. Or after you've met someone at a networking event, you're asking them for their business card, you're taking 30 seconds to add them as a connection on LinkedIn, and then you're following up with a well-written professional note that could sound something like, "Dear Tandeka, it was so fantastic meeting you at the event. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had about scuba diving. And if your company happens to have any summer 2026 internship opportunities, please keep me in mind." And lastly, let's talk about consistency. So the more you repeat this cycle, the more people will come to expect it from you, and the more successful your brand will be. And hopefully you've just increased your chances of landing that internship through utilizing personal branding as a tool. Consistency is very important when building your brand, because if you show up one day for a virtual session and you're dressed up and you're engaging with the speaker, you're asking great questions, and then in the next session, your camera off and muted, or perhaps you have your camera on, but you're wearing your pajamas instead, and you're not engaging in the conversation, that just creates confusion. And again, where there is confusion or inconsistency, people will start to fill in the blanks with their own narrative about you, which is not what we want. And by the way, part of being consistent is also ensuring that your LinkedIn profile and that your virtual presence is reflecting these same qualities and reflecting this brand that you've worked so hard to create. So keep that in mind as well. And lastly, here, as we wrap up this session, I want you to keep in mind also that your brand will change over time as your goals will change over time. And that is totally okay. So on the screen, I've listed a few examples of how it could change. So it could be, for example, right now you're a high school student, and so you're looking for those job opportunities. You want to be an exemplary student. And so this is how you're presenting yourself, right? You're trying to present yourself as a future valuable employee. Later on down the road, you've got the job opportunity, you're working, you want to present yourself as the hardest working employee so that you can get that promotion, so that you can get the next opportunity. And then later on within your career, you'll be looking for those leadership roles. So perhaps you want to move up to manager, director, zone leader, and then eventually to the C-suite, which I believe each and every one of you can make it there if that is what you choose to do. So hopefully this information was valuable. Hopefully this will help you as you go through the process of building your brand. It's been an absolute pleasure being part of the Virtual Career Connections. And thank you all for having me here. I wish you all the best.